What's going on, guys? Dottz here, and today I'm bringing you a release beginner guide for Awakening Woosa. Woosa was a class that I quickly got excited for when I saw the initial trailer, and the more that I played her on Global Labs, the more excited I got for her to come out. So I decided to make her guide the first BDO class guide here on my YouTube channel. So let's kick this guide off with an overview of the class. So Woosa is a DR range class who utilizes both her Awakening and pre-Awakening kits. So if you're looking for a class that just pretty much camps in Awakening all the time, this is not going to be the one for you. Now, with that being said, though, most of the combos that I'm going to show you today do use Awakening only, but as myself and others kind of get more familiar with the class, I'm sure you'll start to see more combos pop up that utilize her pre-Aw kit more. Also, a significant amount of her movement does come from her pre-Awakening kit, which is something I'll be going over later in the guide, and honestly, it's something I'm still kind of getting used to myself. The one thing that also may take a bit of getting used to as well is her AoEs, with a lot of them being kind of like a straight line out in front of you, and generally for PvE, like, conals and 360s are kind of a bit easier to work with. So again, this is just something you're going to want to keep in mind as you start grinding. Speaking of which, Woosa is a relatively slower paced class in terms of APM when you start grinding, and is one that I personally find to be easy on the hands. Now, just a quick disclaimer before we do get into this guide, Awaken Woosa is still very new, and her kit is still being explored in terms of the best way to optimize it, cancels, etc. However, I'm just going to show you guys my initial impressions today on how to play the class and build her, and just kind of my thoughts from, the launch week here. So kicking it off, we're going to start with kind of like your setup for the class. But the first thing we're going to go over is the core skill. So the core skills that I'd recommend for Woosa personally are going to be your forward E for PvE. I find that stun on the ability to be really useful, and it is part of the combo that I'm going to show later. And then in terms of PvE, I think your down E is going to be a bit better, giving you an additional forward guard. However, for PvE, the cores are pretty flexible, so choose which one you like. I recommend going for extra protection though, just to, again, make your combos more protected while you're grinding. Now, in terms of the hotbar that you're going to want to use for Awaken Woosa, I recommend putting your Rabam skill on your hotbar, your E buff essentially, which needs to be hotbarred, your HP and MP buff that you have, Blood Flower, and then you also have your Flow I have no idea how to pronounce that. The one flow ability that I'll highlight here in the screen. Put that on the hotbar as well. I use that sometimes to go from pre-Awakening to Awakening. Now, moving into the next thing, we are going to go over the Rabam skills, aka your skill enhancements. So the level 56 one that I'm going to recommend is Chrysanth Swirl. It's just a nice, fast, long-range CC with a really strong slow, and the frontal guard is also very handy as well. For the level 57 one, I'm going to recommend Ink Stroke. It's good for tagging mobs in PvE, but also as a nice long-range knockdown for combos in PvP. Haven't personally worked this into any of mine yet, but because Woosa doesn't really have that many knockdowns, getting another one from a Rabam skill that also has quite a range to it, I think is really good, because your main knockdown is your kick, which requires you obviously to be really close. So having a ranged knockdown, even though it's unprotected, I do think it's pretty strong. And then for the final ability, I'm going to recommend Reinvigorate. Now, the reason that I recommend this one is because Spring Blossom and Blood Flower do override each other. So you can, for example, if you use Blood Flower and then use Spring Blossom, like, nothing's gonna happen, because the HP recovery from those two skills, it ends up overriding. I'm not sure if that's a bug or if that's intended. So for right now, I have been using Reinvigorate. I don't really use it that much in PvE essentially at all, but in PvP, this is a really good skill for when you disengage, and it allows you to top your health back up. Now, in terms of some buffs that we're going to need to worry about for Woosa, you're kind of like your pre-buffs. Your SLMB is going to apply a plus 20 AP buff, and your WRMB is going to apply a big crit buff. Those are really kind of the only two buffs you super need to worry about from the Awakening kit. Now, in terms of the movement, I have 3 movement combos that I'm going to show on the screen right now. So the first one is going to be your really long range movement combo that's going to involve you using your, forward shift dash. You're going to use that twice, go into your F kick, dash again, use your shift Q to swap to pre-awakening. Then you're basically going to just like dash, shift F, dash, forward F, dash again, and then forward, use the forward E with the dash, shift E, dash, LMB, which will put you into Tiger Fly, then Butterfly Steps, and then hold down F when you're back in Awakening. Now, I know this looks really complicated, but basically a way that you can kind of do it is right after you go from the Shift Q to pre-awakening and you do your first, Shift W dash, I recommend just holding Shift W and F all at the same time. You will use your 2 F skills immediately while dashing, then move your finger to E. You will use your E abilities while dashing, and then right when you get to the end of the animation for your last E dash, go into your Tiger Fly, and then go into Butterfly Steps, and then into the Waltz skill from the Awakening. This might take a little bit of practicing and getting used to, but honestly, after I kind of worked on it for like 15 or 20 minutes, it really made a huge difference. So it's a very long movement combo. I definitely recommend practicing this one. Now, if you want to stay in Awakening and do more of like an Awakening movement combo, we do have an infinite movement combo that does have a bit of a linger to it. So you're going to want to use your 2 dashes. So that's going to be, again, your Shift W. Then you are going to want to go into your F kick move, again into a Shift W dash, and then you're going to want to go into Butterfly Steps, which is Shift Space. You're then going to want to let that super armor at the end of the animation linger, and then you are going to want to repeat. You could also add Tiger Fly in here after the SA linger, so like when the SA linger ends on the Butterfly Steps, just hold LMB, which will take you into Tiger Fly, and then you can repeat the combo again. Now, if you want to make all of this movement protected, what you're going to want to do is use your Shift W dash into either your A and D shift side dashes that give you the iframes, then into Butterfly Steps, then into Tiger Fly. And then doing that again, the big thing with Butterfly Steps is you need to make sure that you let that SA linger, and then that will allow you to basically loop that combo as well. Now, in terms of C swaps for Awakening Woosa as well as locks, what I'm going to recommend that you lock is only Fan Kick on your pre-awakening. This allows you to use your Awakening kick to swap you from pre-awakening to awakening. So definitely a good skill to lock. Otherwise, your Shift Q is going to swap you from awakening to pre-awakening. All of your Rabombs will swap you from Awakening to Pre-Awakening. Like I mentioned earlier, your F now is going to swap you from Pre-Awakening to Awakening. Your A and D RMB will swap you from Pre-Awakening to Awakening. And then your Hotbar skill that we have will also swap you from Pre-Awakening to Awakening. Now, in terms of the add-ons that we have, the PvE add-ons that I'm using, I'm going to show here on the screen. These are pretty much just the add-ons that I'm using to supplement my personal combo that I use. So obviously, when it comes to creating add-ons, just create add-ons that adhere to the combos that you use. Myself and others can recommend add-ons, but ultimately the best add-on set for you is going to depend based on your combos. So these are based off of the combos that I use. Now, typically, though, speaking of combos, when I PvE, I do more of a static rotate or more of a dynamic rotation myself, and I don't go overly static too much. But if I was, these are the combos that I would do. So the easiest one is just literally Shift RMB and then just hold RMB for 4 abilities, and then you use E and then spacebar. Super easy, really low effort way to deal some damage. Besides that, we have another one, which is going to be a side dash into RMB, SLMB. And then I basically just run my E skills. So I do SE, E flow, WE, E flow, Shift E, E flow. I just run through the E abilities into Shift LMB, into the spacebar. Just rinse and repeat. Very easy. And then also, as you're grinding, just toss in your other big AoEs. Now, moving into PvP, these are the PvP add-ons that I have chosen to go with. I have not overly tested these yet, but this is kind of like my initial loadout that I plan on using based off of the main one-on-one combo that I came up with. But odds are, as I start to play Woosa more in PvP, these will be adjusted, but this is my kind of initial theory of what I'm going to be running. And then the combo that I came up with for PvP is going to be AD RMB for the knockback, WE for the stun. We do have the core on that for PvP. We're going to have F for the knockdown. Then we go into WRMB, into RMB, into Shift F, which is going to apply a ton of debuffs, and then go into spacebar. Should, I think, land a kill, but if it doesn't, that person's going to be super freaking debuffed because of the add-ons that we run on Shift F, and you're also going to be, when you use spacebar, increasing your own defense and your own movement speed, so you are going to be pulling out of that situation really, really nicely. So, going into the next part, we're going to talk about gear. So as I mentioned earlier, Awakening Woosa is a DR class, which means that for your boots and gloves, you're going to want to go with Uragons and Begs. Accessory-wise, my preference long-term would be Narc ear accessories, Eye of the Ruins for rings, just your generic AP necklace, Ogre Ring, Lay 10, Tungrat, etc. And then the Voltara Eclipse belt. However, if you want to go total AP monkey, you can just get rid of the Narcs and go with Distos instead. Now, in terms of gems, I run the standard PvE gem setup, so that's going to be the 4 Ancient Magic Crystal of Crimson Flame Power, 2 Corrupted Magic Crystals, 2 Dark Red Fang Crystal Valors, 2 Rebellious Spirit Crystals, and 2 Jinn Vipers. Just the very standard PvE gem setup. PvP-wise, this is just my general recommendation that I run on most of my, not assassin classes. Obviously you can adjust and tune this to your own likings, but if I'm not playing an assassin, this is essentially my general PvP gem setup. So I run 4 Han Hooms, I run 2 Jinn Glorious Crystal of Honor Special Evasion, 2 Corrupted Magic Crystals, 2 Crystals of Elkar, and then 2 Jinn Vipers. Now, in terms of artifacts and lightstones, for PvE, I like to use the Monster AP artifacts, plus the wild for whatever mobs I am fighting. So that's either going to be Predation for just generic monster damage, Blight, Roar, or Fallen, depending on what spot I might be grinding at, plus the Iridescent Lightstone to give me the wild buff. Now for PvP, I recommend running Magic Accuracy artifacts, and then the Wild Human set, which is going to be Blight ×3, and then the Iridescent Lightstone. Now, some tips and tricks and just some things to keep in mind when playing Awakened Woosa is that obviously just holding Shift in RMB and then just holding RMB afterwards does a ton of skills, like I mentioned earlier. Similarly, holding W into RMB and then just hold RMB also does a ton of skills. You also have S and E. The first hit will cause the stiff even if the ability is canceled. So something to keep in mind, it's a really quick instant stiff that you can use to CC your opponent. And then finally, if you use Shift E, it will apply the bomb immediately, even if it is canceled. So if you want to kind of just place that flower on someone without going through your entire ability, or if you have to get out of the way or something, you will still be placing that on your opponent. Also, I do believe that AD-RMB can cancel a lot of the starting a bit animations for a lot of your skills. So that is something to keep in mind if you are kind of looking to start experimenting with some cancels. But guys, that is going to be it for me today on my Woosa beginner guide for launch week. This is just kind of what I've come up with from my initial playing and testing of her. Hopefully you guys did find some information in this guide helpful, and if you did, I'd appreciate it if you smacked a like on it. This is also the first ever BDO class guide that I've ever done, so I'm curious what you guys think about the format and if you do like the video, so please do let me know in that comment section below. And for more BDO beginner guides, please hit that sub button as well as hit the bell to keep those notifications on. So thank you all so much for stopping by. I do very much appreciate it. As always, I'm Dottz Gaming, and I'll see you all next time.